Welcome back to Amazin But True, New York Mets podcast from the New York Post. Those highlights you heard courtesy of SNY, Jake Brown, and Nelson Figueroa at Jake Brown Radio, at FiggyNY, at Amazin But True, where you get all three on Twitter and the New York Post Sports YouTube page. You watch us, subscribe, give us a thumbs up, comment below. What'd you think of the trades the Mets made? That's what we're going to talk about today. We'll talk about those with former Mets GM Jim Duquette. SNY, you see him, MLB Network Radio. He's all over the place. So Jim Duquette is going to join us in just a bit. Duke of Earl. Well, the Duke of the city right now is Justin Verlander because Max Scherzer is gone. And Justin Verlander picked up his 250th win on Sunday. The Mets took 3 out of 4 from the Nationals, and that isn't even close to the top storyline from the weekend, Figgy. As people listen to this on Monday, July 31st, the trade deadline's Tuesday, August 1st at 6 p.m. Who else could be on the go? Could Verlander be that guy? Lots of miscommunication between Eppler and the players. Players are just confused of what direction this team is heading. The fan base is confused. Well, one of those steps was trading Scherzer, and they did get a top prospect. And the Robertson deal, I lost my mind. I'll get your feeling on it because you weren't on there Friday. I screamed. I hated the timing. I did not love the return. Thought they could have got more MLB ready or closer to it player, AA prospects like the Cubs got in 2 studs that they did. They got an 18 and 19-year-old, but they get an angel in the outfield, or the real pronunciation, Luis Angel Acuna in the outfield. Obviously, Ronald Acuna's little brother, having a good year in AA. Has played infield, a little bit of outfield. A guy could be here next year. Scherzer, a win in the trade. Robertson, a loss. Now we see what else happens, Figgy. Is Pham gone? It seems that's almost 100% happening. Vogelback, do you cut him? Do you get anything for him? What else do they do? And obviously, Justin Verlander. Will he go to a Dodgers or Houston? Still a lot of question marks, but a lot has happened here since that rain delay on Thursday.
So Vogelback's days are numbered. We keep saying that. We've been saying that. I don't know. This would be the moment of truth, right? It's 1.5 million. If you sent 35 million over to Texas to get rid of Max Scherzer and to get something back, right now 1.5 just to let the kids play and bring up whoever you have to see what they're capable of doing, so you know what you have going into next year, like a Mauricio. Seems inevitable. So if they have to eat that 1.5, eat that 1.5. At this point, I don't think anybody really would miss it. You're looking at Verlander. I think this is as he's at his peak in a Mets uniform. You're talking about his last 9 starts. So we're not talking about small sample size of just 3 starts or whatever. This is his last 9 starts. His last 9 starts, the man is 4-2 with a 1.95. And that's including a game that he gave up 4 or 5 runs. And this is right before the one bad start that he had since June. But you're looking at a 190 batting average against all the numbers that he had in this Cy Young year. If you go his last 7 starts, you're looking at a 1.49 ERA, which is about on par for what he did in the Cy Young year. So he's rounding into form nicely. He's everything that you wanted. I wouldn't get rid of him. You don't have the pitching to replace him. As we've learned throughout our Mets recent fandom, aces aren't easy to come by. No matter how hard somebody throws, no matter how nasty their spin rate is, no matter what they've done the year before, aces do it every year. Justin Verlander has done it for the last 15 years. So you can't just go and get that in the open market. And the guy who's comfortable playing in New York, right? We've seen this out of him. We've seen him get better. We've seen him be accountable. Even when we didn't like the answers, he's there in front of the media every start, right? So I think you can't trade him unless you're getting someone's top pitching prospect to replace him. Remember, he was being replaced by Hunter Brown for the Astros, and that was kind of one of the reasons why he decided to see what the open market was. And the open market was literally him saying, I'm a vet, and they didn't even get to finish saying available, and the Mets signed him to a $3 million contract. So I think he has said all the right things. He said that he's signed here not for 1 year, but for 3, and he wants to see this thing through. And of course, he has changed his tone a little bit, I think, to help with leverage for maybe if there was an unbelievable trade that knocks your doors off. But the Mets don't have the depth. They don't have the starting pitching. They don't have any of that past this season, with just him, Quintana, and Senga being your three right now that are signed up. So you take him out of the equation, it's bleak. Very,
and he also's got that vesting option for 2025. So we're not just talking about Verlander being a one more year guy. He's part of a 2-year thing. And, when you hear the quotes of, I got to talk to the guy, where is the communication here? And there are probably no Billy Eppler defenders out there, but it's alarming. And it's like, it is a strange time. And I was sitting there at the game Sunday thinking, one, why am I here? Two, I'm thinking what is the future? I was looking into the stadium and just kind of soaking it all in. And I'm thinking, what is the direction of this franchise? Do they go all out this winter, spend money, and put together a championship contender next year? It's hard to feel like that when you're making these moves. And you get the Scherzer move, you get Robertson, but if you're to trade Verlander, you're saying the message, we're going to clean up and we're going to try this offseason for Ohtani, which probably isn't going to happen. And then we're going to patch together a rotation. It's going to take maybe a guy like an Eduardo Rodriguez or a Julio Urias or, Urias, Sean Manaea. Alex Wood. There's not many guys out there. Stroman's got a player option. I don't think he's coming back. Do you get Clayton Kershaw on a 1-year deal, or does he go back to the Dodgers? It's not like there's a lot of world beaters out there. So that's why I think it'd be smart to keep Verlander, send the message, hey, let's go after it. Let's get 2 starters and do that. And then when it comes to the bullpen, I don't think you should trade Brooks Raley. I know he's probably going to get a lot of interest. He's had a great year, but one, he's got a club option for $6.5 million, which is not bad for the way he's pitched. He would easily get that in free agency, Figgy. He's got good off-speed stuff. For now, he's basically your closer. And, he's not a far drop-off from David Robertson as a closer. So, again, do you want to punt away the next 2 months? It seems like they've done that. You still got to put somewhat of a competitive team out there, because these new 2-tone sunglasses that have removed the Max Scherzer label giveaways and the Edwin Diaz trumpet giveaway, the bobblehead, you got to have a way for people to show up besides doing the Bartolo Colon 5 years after he actually retired, retirement day in September, where they better be extra large and not large like this one for those giveaway shirts.
Oof.
So you can only make up so many promotional days to get people to show up. Don't give everyone away here.
We'll go back. Let's finish going with the trades now, right? So for Scherzer, that's an easy one.
That's a win. That's
a win because you didn't see him getting better. You saw him still not being able to find his slider and still using his slider. He had a much better game when he went to more cutters, which was more effective than his slider, but he's kind of hard-headed that way. We've talked about Scherzer before. He would rather give up a home run than walk a guy on the 3-2 count because he wants to challenge him. You know what I mean? He's still old school that way. So Scherzer, I didn't see him gaining ground. It was always 1 step forward, 2 steps back with him. And
what's your feel on Robertson? Because I haven't heard your reaction to the timing of the deal, the rain delay, the 18 and 19-year-old not getting pitching. He was mad at the organization. They come to the clubhouse after a nice 2-1 win. Matt, what is your full reaction to the Robertson deal?
Yeah, the Robertson thing, there's so many layers to it, right? I'm going to try and keep it simple and quick. For me, the talent that you got back won't know until we see what they become, what they're ranked. As far as the Marlins organization, where they're at, we see the Marlins where they're at playing right now. They had a bunch of young talent that have come up and they're starting to play well together and all that. So you have 2 players that right now, positions are so fluid. I don't think we should sit there and go, it's a shortstop where we have a shortstop for the next 10 years and a catcher that you would hope to have for the next 6 at least, and Alvarez. So if this kid becomes a solid backup catcher, so be it. He was kind of a throw in the deal. You never know. He could use him to throw into another deal for next year, whatever it may be. But now they have the one player that they like a lot. Let's see what he turns into. I think we're just very jaded because all the prospects that we've ever heard of coming up through the minor league system, we've never seen. There haven't been many who have been drafted, signed, and brought up the farm system, come up and been an everyday major leaguer. Brandon Nimmo is pretty much the last one. That Jeff McNeil has done well, but even McNeil was hit or miss until they just said, "Hey, let's see what you can do in the big leagues," and it took off for him. Right, he took his game to the next level. So I think there haven't been a lot of those hits. It's been more misses with the Mets in their farm system, and they're trying to replenish the farm system. So you got 2 players for a 38-year-old veteran reliever. Could they have waited a little longer and maybe gotten more? Sure. Could they have waited a little longer and people went out and got Jordan Hicks and gotten, other replacement type closers other than Robertson? Sure. Could Robertson have gone back to Philadelphia and you could have gotten some from Philadelphia? Would you rather go to Philadelphia or you'd rather go to the Marlins? I don't know. I just think they felt, and Eppler felt more so than anything, he got the most bang for his buck. Time will tell. Remember, his job, he may never see these kids in the big leagues. It's almost a certainty, but there will be a new president of baseball operations next year who has to take all these pieces and make something out of it. So it's his job to put that person in a better position than it was when he left. So for Robertson, I get it. I mean, we loved him. We got to talk with him. He's a good dude all the way around, works hard, enjoys the game of baseball. He's, still a little throwback to that old school baseball feel of not analytics, but actually a feel for pitching and a feel for doing the right thing and being a stand-up guy. Having said that, if you're moving on from that, and that's what triggered Scherzer to say the things that he said, and then it kind of led to that. But for the one thing that I'll say is that the Mets are different than the Yankees in the aspect of the media and what the message is that you're trying to send out. If you did this interview with the Yankees, say if they traded their closer and they came in, there would be a themed message across the board. If it's something as simple as, I don't know, I'm just a player, that's a question for ownership. That's a question for management. That's it. You would hear that cliche nonstop. Instead, when the Met players are left to their own accord and their own feelings and their own opinions, it became an absolute circus of let's try and get the best quote because these guys don't obviously know what's going on. And so we're going to interview as many people as we can because everybody looks confused and nobody knows the direction of this team. And then you go to Lindor and Lindor's like, I still love this team. I'm happy to be here and represent this team and represent New York. It's a very trying time during the trade deadline because everybody's on pins and needles as it is. And even Pete Alonso said, I don't know what could happen because it's out of his hands. But there was no set message ahead of time to all these guys about here's how we're going to handle the trade deadline. As a player, you say you don't have enough information. You say that this is the company motto, whatever it is, and they'll stop asking you questions. But the more and more that it is the realness of what happens in a Met clubhouse and you get the answers and guys' opinions, and it makes for better TV, it makes for better quotes, it makes for better, publicity when there isn't a uniform message. And that's something that I wouldn't think Buck Showalter would let happen. He knows the New York media better than anybody. Billy Eppler, those guys just have to be smarter, like set the tone with it. You do the interviews beforehand, and maybe the players can watch you doing the interview while they're eating in the back instead of the reporters going right on to the attack and getting every single player's opinion. Maybe you do a press conference style about what happened and what's transpiring so that they have, well, I just watched the interview just like you did, so these are the answers I'm going with. So it's very difficult time, and I just think it was mishandled all the way around. They've got to be better with that.
And Billy Eppler's days, like we said, are numbered. I mean, they got to be. I mean, and that's the funny thing about him getting an 18, 19, like you said, he won't be anywhere near this organization then. I just don't think he should be anywhere near this organization come Christmas. I mean, I think when the season ends, I think you got to can him. This Scherzer trade is solid, but his overall track record has been pretty piss poor. And I think more so it's coming out by the players of how there's been miscommunication. You can tell these players do not like Billy Eppler. One of them who likes him is Francisco Lindor because he got 10 years and $340 million. He's in a much different situation than even a Pete Alonso, who is not sure of his future because he's still, arbitration the next few years. Like, he doesn't have a deal. McNeil's not going to say much because he got a deal. So this is why Eppler, it's going to be tough here. moving forward with him. We'll see on the next episode what they end up getting for a fam, for, like we said, a Vogelback, and let's just hope Ronnie Mauricio's here, man. If not in Kansas City Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday, he better be here over the weekend in Baltimore against a good Orioles team. And they're going to tease us here. They beat the Nationals and they'll probably beat the Royals, so I'm not going to think they're back in a playoff race here. But if they go out and then beat Baltimore, and by next week when we're talking, they're 4 out, you're going to think, oh my goodness, they just traded everyone and they're still in the race here, Figgy. And that would just be the absolute worst feeling. But again, like I said, I still want them to keep Verlander and be competitive, because this is going to be Tyler McGill is a 10 ERA in the minor league. You're going to just call him up now and reward him just because you have no one else. It could get really ugly, at least on the pitching side, after Kodai Senga and maybe Jose Quintana, this rotation, watching them the rest of this year.
Yeah, it would be a very tough watch. And you talk about those two guys, Peterson and McGill, especially McGill. I thought he was going to take off. I thought this was a guy who filled in admirably when DeGrom went down. There's a guy who was next to Scherzer now for 2 years. You've got to pick up something, right? You've got to be able to say, man, I'm watching the way they throw their bullpens. I'm watching the way that they work. I'm watching the way that they grip pitches and pick up a little something. The regression has been very alarming for someone that I think not only the Mets, but the fan base also had high hopes for. Peterson, looks really good as a reliever, and that's a plus for things. But that, again, then you start getting a little crazy and saying, well, then we can trade Raley and get something of value and make Peterson that left-handed guy. Yeah, you could, but you don't have enough starters. There are no starters at the minor level. Casey's the only one that we've heard of and has done anything at the major league level. And
Vassell, but I don't think he's ready this year.
No,
He'll probably be next year.
Right. He's not ready. And you're talking about one guy of your whole rotation that you're willing to say, hey, he could be. Well, those could be's were McGill and Peterson's, and they've already had 2 years of major league experience at least. So you're thinking that this is the year that they turn the corner. And if they were going to be your number 5, you were going to be solid all the way through, right? They would be solid with one of those guys being your 5. But we've gone 9 deep in starters. We've gone 9 deep, and you realize you don't have enough depth. So again, it goes back to Eppler, right? It goes back to Eppler and the roster construction, especially at the upper levels. And you keep hearing about this whole replenishing of the minor league system, replenishing of it doesn't happen. Have you heard any other teams talking about their minor league system and blaming the things that are happening in the big leagues on their minor league system? You haven't. You've heard, these guys are getting the job done or not getting the job done. When we first said that they put this team together on paper and they were going into spring training, high hopes, extremely high hopes. And I know you can go back and you can find the audio clip of me saying, beware. Billy Eppler has done this before, right? For 5 years in Anaheim, he's had an open checkbook and he's had star players. You can't name 2 pitchers in the Billy Eppler regime. You couldn't name me 2 pitchers that developed and became all-stars or were, guys that you can count on. He was walking into a Jacob deGrom, a Max Scherzer, a Justin Verlander, Edwin Diaz. Real tough to be a GM when you have that already in place. What happened when you don't have that in place? That's what a real GM is. A guy who can find you guys, not off the scrap heap, because we've seen that, right? He's quick to find somebody off somebody else's scrap heap. I'm not talking about scrap heap, but I'm talking about that offseason of saying, you know what? It's never a bad thing to have too much pitching going into spring training, too much quality pitching. And there were guys available, but it shouldn't be a money thing, right? So I think going into next year with all the things that we know about Billy Eppler, I'm not so confident about what could happen because there's a disconnect with this team. There has been since day one. This team has not felt like the same team. And what we worried about in the beginning were Scherzer and Verlander we're going to be like oil and water, right? At this point in their careers, yes, they're both Hall of Famers, but, each one are trying to do things on their own on their own accord or their own level. Like this team doesn't seem like the type of team that goes out together, hangs out together. We had Lindor not buying the car for McNeil after he said he would, and he wins a batting title. You have Pete Alonso, who gets hurt, comes back early. He's a gamer, but then he's going to the freaking home run derby and taking 1,000 swings as fast as he can off a BB pitcher who can't even reach the plate. And that guy gets paid to do it every single day with the Mets. So there's so many layers of things that we've seen, and you just never felt like this team gelled together. And that's
and Steve Gelb said that too. Gelb was mentioning how like it just didn't seem like the same unit. I've said that every week where there's something going on behind the scenes. These guys don't like each other, and everyone wanted to say this is the same team. Well, it's not. It's different rotation. There's some different pieces in the mix there. It's not the same team. But yeah, I don't think they hang out. Like I don't think you got Verlander going out with a Lindor on a Friday night and stuff like that. There's different kind of niches and little corners and guys that don't really care about playing for each other. So maybe, and you got to factor in too, Verlander didn't start the year with the team. He's on the IL. So like for a month, he wasn't even there. So that piece was gone. Scherzer isn't always the friendliest with everyone around. Like he's kind of a maniac. So guys making 40 million, then you got the guys making a couple million and just different crews and corners. And that, you played for a lot of different teams, Figgy. Chemistry is something you cannot overlook in a championship team. The good ones will have, we joke about the rally dildos, but they'll have, like the cool hats when they hit a home run in the dugout. They get along. They're cohesive. This team just has not been cohesive. And it's, a big part of the reason why everyone's like, shut up about the wild card race. They're finished. My thought is you never know in baseball. That's baseball. But that's why people are like, this team just doesn't have it.
Yeah. And all those things that you said, the celebration things, that's another thing. But it was because this team was underachieving at every facet. Every guy looked around there and there was really nobody that you were like, man, at least he's doing really well. Like that guy's carrying the load, because nobody was. Nobody was and it's not about the payroll. I'm gonna tell you right now, in that clubhouse, nobody's sitting there going, well, that guy makes $43 million. He has to do better. Nobody's saying that. They realize that he's not performing at the level that he is. And it's frustrating for him. So that tension is there. So if that guy's a Hall of Famer and he's not able to raise his level, who the hell am I as a second-year player? And every time I go out there, I'm expected to carry the load. And then we got a Japanese pitcher that we can't have throw on a regular day's rest, but every time he gets his extra rest, he does outstanding. He's got his own program. He's got his own trainers. He's got his own thing. Everybody's got their own thing, man. And that makes it really difficult, because all it takes is one. I never thought baseball was like this, and it's more and more like this, especially in New York. Aaron Judge went down. The Yankees still had a veteran team and had star players, and it was as if they had never played baseball before. Edwin Diaz went down, and you're thinking, it's a closer. How many times do you get to the closer? You got to be winning anyway. And Edwin Diaz went down, and it was a disaster for the rest of that bullpen immediately. Right.
And how about Buck's quote about that? You heard Buck mention the other day about, we got a fun WBC out of it. Do you see that quote from Buck?
I'm so sick of him complaining about the WBC. Like that's what did it. You know what did it? His brother jumped on his back. That's what did it. We've seen it on the video. So for me, you're watching a team or teams in a team sport element where you always talk about 25, 26 guys pulling on the same end of the rope, right? But I've never seen baseball be like this, and especially in New York with this huge market where one guy goes down and the team goes to shambles. They can't get over it. And every day it's, do you think if you had Diaz? Do you think if you had Judge? Do you think there's other players, man? There's other. What does Judge have to do with the rest of the starters for the Yankees? Like, why is Severino so terrible for the Mets side of things? What does Diaz have to do with Scherzer and Verlander in the beginning of the year? What does Diaz have to do with, Quintana getting a rib injury? I get that, but you've got to find a way to persevere, overcome these things. We talked about, the way that they were hitting, their approach, even changing the coaching staff around a little bit changes the message, right? The messenger, who is now, a guy being maybe a first-year hitting coach instead of just the assistant, he's now put in a position of these are your hitters. Whatever happens is on you. I'm not involved anymore. So even for the coaching staff, even for the manager, Like they won 101 games. Billy Eppler was giving a gold stamp of approval when he went in for his year-end review and sat with Steve Cohen. You did a fantastic job. We won 101 games. The minor league system didn't get any better. The minor league system didn't get replenished during that 101. Actually, he tore down the minor league system. He went in there and took all the guys who had played Major League Baseball in a Met uniform before and said, thank you for your service. We no longer need you. He went out and got analytical guys or brought guys over from Anaheim, the whole staffs of their analytical department from Anaheim, because now he had the backing of ownership that 101 wins means that you did a great job at the big league level. The players balled out, man. The players had close to career years across the board, higher than normal expectations. Canna, Marte, Nimmo turning his game up, McNeil winning a batting title.
And in the middle of that, he half-assed a trade deadline, by the way, by trading.
Oh my God, no. Let's not even half-ass a trade deadline. You were in first place, handily. You were in first place, and you had an opportunity to add on to that. And what did you add by subtracting?
Tyler Naquin.
I mean, those are the things that you will know. So you get to this trade deadline, and now he's acquiring pieces, right? They're trying to bring things in to make it a little bit better. You had the lead, man. You had a chance to go sweep the leg, finish him. But what'd you do? You went out and got 3 fringe acquisitions. Michael Givens. You thought that reclamation project was going to help you get to the promised land? I don't see where we've seen in the past, and I mean, don't look too far in the past because we saw what the Braves did. Acuna went down. So what do we get? 3 guys who've been all-stars before, and a 4th guy who was a pretty good player, just needed a change of scenery. Have you ever heard one Braves fan say, man, I can't believe we gave up those guys for those guys? No. But they acquired the right mix, the right talent. They were cohesive. With Acuna out, they were still cohesive. I don't see that from this team. I just don't. And chemistry is huge. We've seen the Padres twice. The Padres, when they first got over there and they put all that dream team together, and by June, they blew it all up. The Padres now, the way that they're playing, doesn't matter about money. We've seen it in Anaheim. Money is no object. I get that. But that doesn't make the team better. Like it has to be you talk about winning culture. You can't just stick them all in a room and say, now this is a winning culture when they haven't won anything.
Well, it's going to be an interesting trade deadline here. Let's wrap it up. I'll wrap it up on this before we throw to Jim Duquette. You know, the Mets take 3 out of 4 over the weekend. Good stuff from Alonso, a couple homers. Good stuff from Verlander getting the win. Good stuff across the board there. Carrasco was terrible, and there's going to be a point the Mets might have to just DFA him now. I mean, at this point, if you're going to go young and see what you have, it might be time to say goodbye to Cookie. I don't think he'll be part of the team next year. So coming up, Royals, second worst team in baseball. I think you should try, hopefully sweep your Quintana, Senga, and then Scherzer's spot will be Thursday. So we'll see who they put in there. And then the Orioles, and then followed by 11-game homestand. And it's going to be a much different looking homestand. It's going to be a much different looking team. We'll see if Ronnie Mauricio gets the call up. We'll be back after the deadline. If they make another move or two, there'll be a show. And then if not, after the Royals series. But, you know, I'll close with this before we go to Jim Duquette. And I'll put on my shout out to Danny from Delta for getting me the shades that they gave out, the Pete Alonso. I'll give the State of the Union in the they're actually very cool. I actually would wear these to the beach, although my glasses are off, so I can't see your face right now. But I'll say this. Don't suck next year. Don't tell me you're going to put together a competitive team. Put together a championship team. You don't have the roster to say, oh, you know, we'll be good in a couple of years. Go win now. Keep Verlander. And it'll be a hell of a ride, a hell of a story if Justin Verlander is atop that 2024 Mets rotation with new pieces, a new team president, hopefully a new GM. Because the next 2 months are going to hear a lot of fire Billy, fire Eppler, bye-bye Billy. You know, the karaoke song won't be bye-bye-bye. It'll be bye-bye Billy. And the Mets organization is at a crossroads right now. But this team should still win next year. I don't want to rebuild. You have all the money in the world. There's absolutely no excuse to not go out and win a championship next year. And there's no excuse to put out somewhat of a competitive product these next 2 months instead of laying flat and being the losers that you look like by trading Robertson 4 days early, by going after guys who are young. I hope these prospects pan out. I've gotten over that trade. I like the Scherzer trade. But now go show me that you have some guts, that you have some cojones, and that you're going to go after something special next year. Because Mets fans have waited long enough. 96, 2006, 2016. We are approaching almost 40 years without a championship. And that is far too long for a team that now has a new owner and all the money in the world to get one. So Jim Duquette, former Mets GM, will talk about the trade deadline with us next on Amazin But True. Welcome back to Amazin But True. Jake Brown, Nelson Figueroa with our special guest, the Duke of Earl, Duke Blue Devils, the Duke of England. Any other Duke?
That's all you got?
I'm running out of Dukes, but we have Jim Duquette, former Mets GM, 0304, also in the Orioles front office. Now you catch him all over the baseball media map, whether that's SNY, the Nationals channel, Masson, whether it's MLB Network Radio. He's everywhere, and he's also on Twitter at Jim Duquette GM. Jim Duquette, Jim, good morning. Thanks for coming on the show.
Good morning. What's going on, gentlemen? How are you doing? I think that's all the Dukes that I know too, so I think you got those covered.
Yeah, you're our favorite Duke, so that's all that matters.
Oh, that's all that matters, right?
As a Maryland fan, I hated Duke, but I'll like you, Duke.
Yeah,
that's fine with me. So
that is true.
We appreciate you coming on, and obviously we have you on during a time that a time that is a stressful time in Mets land, a time where we have producer Andrew Hartz and intern Nick Guzman refreshing tweet deck to make sure John Heyman or another reporter is not tweeting out that the Mets have traded Justin Verlander or something else. Let's get your reaction. I kind of lost my mind, was a little mad about the David Robertson deal, a little more fine with the Scherzer deal, but would love to hear your thoughts on both trades.
Well, I think we were kind of waiting for the Mets to decide, even though they were saying that, even a month and a half ago, and Steve Cohen said, if we're in the same position when we get to the trade deadline, we're definitely not going to add. I kind of wondered, because it's new ownership, first time they've actually been in this position under new ownership. What were they going to do? Like, were they really kind of trade anybody? I think to me that was because there's a like the Padres are a very similar team, similarly in terms of financed, right? They have a huge payroll, they have similar star players, and AJ Preller, their GM, told me they were going to add around the fringes, and so you're like, okay, well, that's whether you agree or disagree, that's a pathway, right? Like, they're chosen a path, they're all in, they're not so I wondered if the Mets might do the same thing. I thought they could have. I don't mind this path because I don't really feel like this team is very good, right? We've seen this team for over 100 games, and they've really, unfortunately, stunk it up, and it's hard to say, well, I'm going to punt and the last 2 months of the season, try to add some other pieces and, kind of retool it or whatever the word, rejuvenate. We'll come up with our own word that comes out this time of the year. So I just start with there. So once you've kind of come to the idea or the conclusion that you're going to move somebody, Robertson, for me, I would have waited a little bit longer. I think he could have gotten a little more. That's my only kind of criticism on that. And those two players, the one thing from the GM perspective, when you make these trades, you sit there in the chair, you haven't seen any of these players. Like you might have some video, you might have some tech, but you haven't seen them with your own eyes. So you're relying on all these other people, right? And if it's your scout or two scouts that have seen, you're like, man, that's not an awful good look to move them. And the one advantage they had with trading with the Marlins was, and Figgy, you remember this in the minor leagues, we played all those teams on the East Coast of Florida, including the Marlins. We had the Dodgers over there. We had, at the time was the Expos and the Nationals that are there now. And you see those minor league players that are playing in the complex way more often. You got 8, 9, 10, a dozen different looks. So the only silver lining I'll add to those players that they got was they got multiple looks from multiple employees, player development, guys in the office and their pro scouts. So when you're dealing with making trades, you're dealing with like, you want to, there's no certainties there. You're hoping the likelihoods that these guys are going to get to the big leagues, but they got multiple looks. So if they're wrong, all of those guys are wrong, and so, I think that's where I'm trying to make you feel better about the Robertson trade, Jake. And so did I convince you?
Well, see, here's what I agree with you. The timing. I felt it was waving the white flag a little too early. Like, why Thursday in the middle of a rain delay? The guys get to the locker room after a win. It's like, oh, you're gone, David Robertson. It's like, I always argue, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. There's 21 other hours of the day. The Mets have made 2 trades this year during a game and 2 clubhouse favorites, veterans, guys everyone loved during a game. The morale, the message that sends to the fan base, that sends to the rest of the clubhouse, to me, it just seems like poor business, a poor job by the GM. Did you do that often? Does that happen a lot? It just feels like it's happened a little bit more often, and with 2 guys that were popular amongst the rest of the players.
The timing of it is a good point. Like, it's hard to time. These take days many times to come together. Like the Scherzer trade took multiple days, and that one was really complicated because you had a no trade clause. You had how much money was going to be exchanged, trying to figure out the player. You got to go to him eventually and ask him if he wants to opt out. Those are unusual things, and so the timing of those, it's organic. It comes up whenever it comes up, and you don't want it to happen during the game. You don't want it to happen, but it's like nothing you can really do about it. I think the same thing kind of goes with Robertson. I think the Robertson thing was interesting. I was told that it leaked out from the Miami side, which happens, unfortunately. You're still having to go through physicals, and you're not sure on the physical side if the guy's going to pass the physical, and like all these things that come up with this. And so I think the timing of it, you're right. I think there was a lot of times that part of it is out of everyone's control, because somebody did something here, somebody said something to a reporter, and all of a sudden you're rushing to tell a guy when you didn't think it was going to break at that point. You really thought it was going to happen the next morning. So from the GM, listen, I'm more forgiving to GMs because I was in the role, and I know how difficult it can be, and with all the pressure and attention that comes with it. So I think in both of those senses, it's not ideal, obviously, where you don't want then, when Scherzer, got traded, then they, laid an egg that game. I mean, they were sleepwalking in the first inning or 2, right? So, from a fan, you're going, what the heck? Couldn't you just wait? But I think it's really difficult to time it. They happen when they happen.
I think more so it's with the social media, right? Everybody wants to be first, but nobody necessarily has to be right. So that always happens. Like you said, it was leaked out from the other side. We saw this when, they didn't get the trade done with Wilmer Flores, right? He's in the middle of the game, and you're like sitting there. We were at SNY going, why the hell is he still playing? He's been traded. Yeah. I've never heard of this. And we were trying to wrap our heads around it. And it was because, like you said, they agreed to a trade. They agreed to certain terms, but the medical still had to get looked into. And there's a lot of other complications that have to do with it. Scherzer with the money and how many years left. And he had to opt into that extra year so that they're getting 2 years out of Scherzer. I think there's a lot of things, especially at this time of year. You're talking to somebody whose name was constantly at the end of a trade. Like I think my name on this should be, the TBA guy. It's really something where it's stressful on everybody, right? It's stressful on the players. And I think the one thing was that when you made this deal with the players and you said that we're going to go to the deadline to see where we're at, but you don't get to that point. For Robertson, he's probably the most valuable closer type that's going to be available. So you feel like multiple teams that are going to be in panic mode at that point. We just saw Toronto's closer went to the IL. They went and got Jordan Hicks. Jordan Hicks and Robertson are in 2 stratospheres. One's a dependable reliever. The other one could be 8 walks, could be 8 strikeouts. So to me, I think more so when you get to the trade deadline and all these pieces are moving and your team is sitting there wondering what direction we're going in. When Max said, I need to have a talk with ownership. And there are a lot of people in this room that want to have a talk with ownership. That, to me, was a very telling sign that things were not good. What do you think?
No, I agree with you. I feel that there has been a disconnect with the communication coming from the front office to the players. Usually the manager is that guy, but they're the trade deadline, it's general manager, right? And it's the owner. And Steve Cohen has created an environment, a culture where the players feel comfortable, not necessarily leaping over Billy Eppler, but going directly to the owner. And they have that, that relationship, whether it's going to dinner or just, talking about baseball or any of those things. It's a little bit unusual. If you go around the game, not every player has access to the owner, and sometimes it's one or two. And it seems like there's certainly more because he's around more. He's trying to create a family atmosphere. Like there's all these things positive. Mostly, I think they're almost all positive, right? When it comes to the deadline, you're looking for answers. And usually the general manager is the one who's down there having those conversations with the players. Hey, listen, we're going to make this move just to give you a heads up. And I thought they missed an opportunity, really, honestly, because here, what ends up happening, as you guys saw, right? And we've seen this before, the players after the game, the media is going right to them. They're going to ask them their thoughts on it. And you have a chance, whether it's during the rain delay or immediately after the game, to go to a couple of the players or in its entirety and just say, listen, hey, here's what we're doing. We're not a rebuild. We're in a situation where we like this deal. We're going to be selective, and you can get your message out to the players so that in essence there's not confusion from their side of things. They're not going, well, I need to talk to them, or I don't know what's going on. So there's some things that I feel like there've been a couple of maybe missteps here along the way. But in terms of the Robertson thing, the last thing on that is we're going to find out. Like Vargas is the guy they really, really like. Obviously the catcher and Hernandez too. But the proof is, like, I don't have an issue. Some people did about, well, you got to get an upper level guy closer to the big things. They can buy that guy. And that's what they're going to do. Like they're buying guys at the upper levels. They're buying a relief pitcher or a young starter. If they need to, they can go out and make a deal. For me, if I'm trying to get the highest value guy, some guy that has projectability, that's an everyday or better type of player. So that's your chance as a GM to try to hit a home run. Now, by the way, if you pick a guy that's 3 years away, you may not be around to see him. But I think you're doing the right thing for the organization, trying to find the best available talent, even if you have to go down to the lower minors.
All right, a lot to react to there. One, I just think Billy Eppler's done a horrible job, and you saw after the game, Brandon Nimmo even was questioning him, and Brandon Nimmo's Mr. Happy all the time, and I mean, Brandon Nimmo with a frown is not a good looking man. Like, he is a scary man when he's frowning because it's so rare. And even he was like, "Yeah, I'll have to talk to them." I mean, where is the communication? Do they not have each other's number? Like, do they not text? Do they not like send a message say, "Hey, we're gonna try to win next year"? That's why I think Mets fans too are concerned. It's like, what is the message you're sending the fan base? What is the message you're sending the players? Because this window was supposed to be short, and you were supposed to either win this year or next year. And now who knows about next year? The prospects of the low level guys. Yeah, I might have a family and 4 children by the time they're here. They'll be in Queens, and maybe when NYCFC's here, and I'm wearing this soccer jersey to a game in 2027, which is why I was mad, because last year the Cubs were able to get 2 pitching prospects who are absolutely dominating in the minors right now. The Cubs guy have like a 0.7 ERA. So that's the other thing of this, Jim. Both these trades, and this was people were tweeting me and yelling at me saying, you build, you get whatever the best players possible. It doesn't matter that they're catcher, shortstop, infielder. You have those guys, you get the best player possible. But at some point, Jim, you got to retool the pitching that you traded away. The pitching you traded away for the rentals last year, and Naquin, giving away the Holderman away, giving away prospects for the Darren Ruff trade that, we're still losing sleep over. At some point, Jim, you got to stop saying we need the best players and got to say we need pitchers.
Well, and that I think is the other kind of quandary that they're in, right? So you're absolutely right. They have nothing at the upper minors when it comes to pitching, right? Very, very little, as we've seen. And they had this philosophy of having optionable pitchers to go to the minor leagues that in the bullpen and try to give them some flexibility. The problem is you didn't have enough of those. You didn't have enough quality. You didn't have enough high-end velocity stuff, which every bullpen has, and the Mets don't have enough of. So there's a lot of So a lot of these things are intertwined to what you're talking about. And I think that the aspect of them getting better with their pitching, they have shown to this point a reluctance to give good starting pitchers, long-term contracts, like more than 3 or 4 years. Something's going to have to give here, right? So if you're not going to trade for pitching, which, hey, we're okay if we don't want to do that. But you're going to have to get it from somewhere, right? But you're going to restrict, there's not enough good pitching out there. So you can't keep restricting the pool of talented players out there and expect that you're going to have good pitchers. So they're going to have to be more flexible in these other areas if they're going to go down this road of trading for the prospects, the position player prospects that they've done. So for me, it's like, okay, I'll give you a pass, but you better make some adjustments this winter because you're short on the pitching staff.
They're hugely short on the pitching side, right? Because now who they have locked up for next year and beyond? You have Quintana, you have Senga, and pray for rain. I mean, you're looking at
Verlander
for now.
If they don't move
my whole mindset is already like they're going to trade.
He's gotten gone.
And please don't keep him. I want Verlander here.
You know what it is. So they've said, you've heard this how many times already? The money is spent. It was budgeted for, right? So the money is spent with all these players for all these trades. You also have with Verlander. He even said, I signed here for 3 years. I didn't sign here for 1 year. This isn't what I want to do. And now because he's seeing, Max get traded away and he sees Robertson get traded away, he's changing his tone a little bit because he understands the reality of it. He doesn't want to, keyhole these guys into having to keep him if they can get something of value. But if it's not like top 2 pitching prospects for a Verlander to hopefully win a World Series with somebody else, then the trade shouldn't be made. I don't want to hear about, this is a 17-year-old kid who is at the complex who throws a nasty slider. So right. I think when you're looking at these trades and where you're at with your pitching, McGill regressed immensely this year. He was supposed to be under the tutelage of those 2 guys, those 2 aces, Hall of Famers, and you thought McGill would just be soaking it up like a sponge and taking the next step. He has regressed and been a disaster down in the minor leagues. Peterson has been better because he's kind of swallowed his ego. Now he's come out of the bullpen. His stuff is playing up a little bit more. He's executing a little bit better. So Peterson is a guy you're slotting into that rotation as well. So you now have those 3. But if you don't have a bona fide 1, then why would you even think about entertaining a trade where it's a guy that you got and to replace Jacob deGrom, and you go and say, oh, well, we're going to go ahead and get some 17, 18-year-olds down in the minor leagues.
Right. No, so for Scherzer, right, we can all acknowledge that this was not his typical year, right? I mean, it's going to go down as probably the worst season he's had in his career, so maybe his very early years. If you go back to maybe early Detroit, right, where he wasn't pitching deep in the game, his command was all over the place. Listen, he hasn't been the same since they suspended him for the sticky stuff. That's the truth. Right. And his slider it's been garbage. Yeah, I mean, he's given up 11 homers on the slider, I think it is. He's given up over 20 home runs on the season. Like it's been pretty bad overall. Not 43.3 million worthy, right, of the investment. So then you have to make the decision or question yourself, what is he part of your starting rotation for next year, right? Because he was opting in. He wasn't opting out, right? We all know that. What was he opting out for? He wasn't going to get anywhere near that money, So he was opting in. So he's going to be yours next year. I think that was what was stunning for me about trading Scherzer was they were making the decision that he is not part of the solution for the 2024 season because they're going to be they want to get to the postseason. That to me was like, are they sure about that? Are they? Because I don't know. You never bet against the future Hall of Famers. Like those guys figure it out. Like he's going to figure it out. As bad as he's been, he will figure it out. He might be with the Rangers, but he'll figure out, what's going on. In my mind now, is he a number 1? No, I don't think he's probably a number 1 anymore. But and there's some injury concern down the road where I don't know if you can even expect 32 starts out of him anymore, right? All those things. But I think that having him and Verlander, you could still piece together that rotation, with him and be good. Now you got to figure out who you're going to replace him with, and the replacement cost is going to be expensive. Like it's 5 or 6 years. Don't tell me that you really like this Japanese pitcher. You want two Japanese pitchers in your rotation. They got to go every 6th day. Like
unless you're talking Japanese pitcher as in Shohei Ohtani.
Yes.
Unless it's Ohtani. Now, and if it's Ohtani, then you've got your fix. But outside of Ohtani, if you're going over to the Japanese league to get a pitcher, because he's going to more short term, like you're going to have and Senga's been fantastic, but you're going to have 2 guys like that. We've never seen it. I think there's a reason for that. So,
right.
I'm very curious how they're going to replace Max this winter. It's going to have to be somebody like Shohei or, any of these other, Arias or whoever.
Yeah. So now with the prospect that they got back for Max, now we're talking a blue chip type prospect, obviously bloodlines, and who's excelling at an upper level AA, where you can see him making that jump a lot quicker. Some estimate the ETA as in next year, 2024, him, making his debut. So I think you can see a little bit more of a light at the end of the tunnel for that one, where you're, offloading Max. It's only money. The money's already been spent in their ownership group's mind, which would never happen with the Wilpons in a million years, or with 99% of owners. Let's get that straight. Right. I'm not going to sit here and poop on the Wilpons. 99% of owners are not throwing away $36 million just to get rid of a player, because just in jersey sales alone, you probably make some of that back, right? So I think at least you can see with that trade, you got hopefully a can't miss type prospect and a kid who's going to be, again, in a Met uniform for 6 years. So that one I think you're more okay with. I think more so is whatever the next domino is tells you which way they're going.
Mm-hmm. I agree with you. And if you go and look at so far the trade market, I'd say it's been steady, not been overly crazy yet, but there's only been 2 top 100 prospects that have been traded so far. The catcher that went from the Angels to the White Sox, Edgar Quero, he was ranked in I'd say the 70s. And Acuna to the Mets, and he was 44th on the MLB pipeline. And I think he's going to end up moving up on that list. So you have a top, and so those teams aren't usually giving up those top guys. So I like the haul that they got back for him. I think he's going to be impactful for sure. But like you said, if Verlander moves, which I don't think he will, but if he does, he doesn't like the direction for next year. And that would be concerning to me, or there's uncertainty there. So I think like he's going to dictate whether he gets traded or not because of the no trade clause. Mm-hmm. So, they're not going to come to him and say, well, listen, we've got a deal for you to trade you to Cincinnati. He's not going there. He's like, he might go to Houston. He might go to the Dodgers. And I don't think he's going to Houston because they don't want to pay any money and they don't have the prospects unless they gave up their first rounder from a couple of years ago. They're the Drew Gilbert kid. So I don't see that. I think it's the Dodgers or bust. And if you see Verlander moved, then he didn't like the direction, or he didn't like some of the answers that he got from ownership, from the front office.
Well, I mean, now, like, do you think a player sits there and says, well, I like the haul that they got? Because like the Aaron Rodgers trade, just to give you some perspective of what my mind is thinking. When Aaron Rodgers comes over and he's talking about, it wouldn't be fair to the Jets for me to just make it a 1-year thing because they gave up so much for me. Do you think Verlander gives a rat's that they're going to get back 3 great prospects for me, so this is why I said yes to the deal? No, absolutely not, right? Because if it was to Cincinnati, who has a ton of prospects that they could give up, even a team that you're very familiar with, Baltimore, Verlander to Baltimore makes a ton of sense because you would probably get back major league ready type prospects. And so that's something where I'm saying if you can get a pitching prospect and an everyday playing prospect from Baltimore, where these kids are there already, they're either there or right there, because they're going to have a logjam here soon in the infield as well with Gunnar Henderson and Jackson coming up. Those are where you're looking at these prospects. That would be a place, I think. And for a guy like Verlander, I mean, yes, they're young, but they're ready to strike now, and they're an exciting bunch. It's a great fan base. I don't know. I think it's more than just the Dodgers, but you're right. He holds all the cards because of what he wants to do. And that would be very telling, more so than what they get back if he's willing to just leave, because I still see this team as a chance to win. They have the chance to be successful because ownership will spend money. We saw this already once. And you said it. They can replace guys by getting some of those free agents. But free agent market isn't too sexy out there other than the what's the guy from the Angels that's going to be available? Forget his name.
There's a lot of names. There's a lot of starting pitchers. The Urias, there's number 3s, there's numbers 4, but there's not many like aces. They're not Verlander like aces. So that's why you get rid of Verlander. It's Senga, Quintana. And you not only need 3 starters, you need depth pieces as well. We saw the Mets go to their 8th and 9th starters. You need like 6 starters in free agency and trade, and maybe that takes taking prospects. So I just think it's sending the wrong message, Jim, to ship JV away.
Yeah. Well, and to Nelly's point, if and to really what we've been talking about too, Jake. Like if you're going to take Verlander, all right, well, this might be your one opportunity to go get pitching. The Orioles don't have a lot of pitching prospects. No. They're a team that is heavy in position player prospects. They are close to the big leagues, and you can do get one of those guys and flip them to somebody else for a pitcher. The Mariners have some really good starting pitchers. I think they would make one of their starters like a Logan Gilbert available if you gave them a top end position player. Mm-hmm. So there might be 3-way deals, but those are exponentially harder to do.
Yeah. Well, let's see what happens with Verlander. Let's see what else happens. It seems like Tommy Pham didn't even make the trip to Kansas City, so it looks like he's pretty much gone. I mean, does Vogelback get you a 6-pack of beer? Does he get you a bodega donut? Like, what do you cut him? Because the question we ask every week is, why is Ronnie Mauricio not here? I would expect Ronnie Mauricio is on the team in either Kansas City this week or in Baltimore, and if he's not, I mean, the fan base is going to be pissed off because if you're trading guys away, we want to see the youth, and we don't want to see Vogelback slot in the DH hitting 5th for no reason these last 2 months.
No, and you want to see Vientos playing every day, stick him out in the outfield if need be. Like you got to get these guys playing time. So I think that to me will be the pathway. I think we'll see over the next couple of days once the trade deadline is over. I would expect Mauricio to come up as well. And that's what you got to do. That's the path for the Mets for the remaining 2 months is get those position players up here to take a look at them. Get David Peterson in the rotation and get him see what he looks like. See if you can figure out what relievers are going to be here for next year. Like you start looking at those type of answers, and they're a little different. You still want to win as many games as you can, but you want to get some answers for next year. So I think that's what you'll see out of them. I would be shocked. And by the way, if the beer's cold, I would trade Vogelback. If it's on the side of the road, I'm not doing it.
It's got to be like a Modelo or like Michelob Ultra or something. Don't give me like a basic like piss beer. It's got to be a good beer. Not that those are like elite beers, but I'm not an IPA guy, Jim, or a Heineken or a dark.
You don't strike me as an IPA guy, Jake. You don't.
I'm a White Claw High Noon guy. My basic white girl drink. Vodka soda, splash of cran is my Delta Club go-to with Danny, and I've been drinking heavily to avoid watching this team during games. So
they're winning. What are you talking about, Jake?
Well, that's the thing. It's like they're going to tease us here, and this week they're going to sweep the Royals and get within 4.5, and they're going to have Nelson Figueroa starting on Saturday. That's what it's going to get to.
Nothing will piss us all off more than they finish like 2 or 3 games out. You're going to want to go nuts.
You know that's going to happen. Nuts. And Nelly has at least one good game left in his arm.
That's all I need.
The last time we saw him on the big stage, it was tremendous, right? In the WBC. I think that was one of the last times I saw you pitch. So
I thought you meant the Ferry Hawks. I thought you meant the Ferry Hawks last year. I was like, he gave up 10 runs last year. What do you mean?
Whoa. Easy with giving up the 10 runs, pal. You have no idea what I had to do just to give up those 10 runs. That was a 117 pitch complete game effort.
Yeah, you just took an ice bath before the show to recover from that one still. So we'll see what the Mets end up doing, and Jim Duquette will be all over it. And you can follow him on Twitter at Jim Duquette GM and see him on SNY MLB Network and hear him on MLB Network Radio as well. Jim, good luck this deadline. I'm sure it's a lot less stressful talking about it on networks than dealing prospects and dealing guys, and it's a much less stressful time for you.
Sleeping a lot better, Jake. Yeah. There's no question about that. So yeah, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. It's good to catch up with you guys again.